Music has always been my sanctuary. Many people say that it's a healer, and it really is. I think that, sometimes you're sitting there with a headache and you're playing, something that Ilayaraja did, and suddenly you feel better, That's something that certainly, for me, has been the case, and I'm sure a lot of the world's population will agree with me on that. I have a pretty varied cultural background in the sense that I was born in Sri Lanka. I was raised in Denmark and then in West Africa for my formative years, and when I was 12 I moved to the UK. So my parents are Tamil speaking. They also were born in Sri Lanka, but they left Sri Lanka when they were very young and raised me abroad, basically, in their eyes and in the eyes of the world. Yeah, I've grown up pretty much in Europe in that sense. I had no idea that I would end up in media. I'd studied like South Indian classical music, Carnatic music from the age of 7. So I'd been learning it. In Nigeria, learning it just meant that I went to classes and, I didn't really have a visibility of what you would do with this. When we moved to the UK, however, we moved to East London, where it was rich in Asian culture. There were lots of Tamils there were lots of South Indians. So I was able to, watch Bharatanatyam classes, take, music classes, and also watch concerts. So it made a huge difference for me when I saw how this music I'd been learning and kind of struggling with, because I was into Madonna and I was reading smash hits, and, I was also going to these classes, and then seeing it perform live really made a difference to me. And I'd seen several concerts in London, and that kind of woke me up to the musical side of things. Loved music. I carried on. I sang in the choir when I was in school, and English was, writing essays and English lessons went really well. I got A's in my GCSEs, but it was never a career path in any way. And I come from a background that's corporate. I worked for the likes of Oracle and the Hilton Group and Pepsi-Cola, and I kind of chucked in my corporate career to move into media, and I love it. I've done it since 2003 now. Well, it's been a difficult one, because I think for my parents, my corporate career was much more the normal life. You knew you had a paycheck at the end of the month, and you're working for big companies, so you felt like you were more secure. My move to media was, treated as one that was very, very scary by not just my parents, the entire society, many of my friends in the corporate world, especially when I was leaving it all to move from one to the other. And I made that decision. I went on a trip to Egypt and decided that's it. I've got another job. I had another job lined up, which was going to be in Leicester Square. Easy commute for me, looked like a lovely job, very well paid. And I actually threw it all in and said, I'm going to try this. And I went to India for 3 months and, kind of did a little discovery trip to see what it was like. What is the scene there really like? So I'd gone to an urban music seminar at Royal Festival Hall back then in 2003 in the summer. Rishi Rich and the crew were all doing big things in the UK charts. I had been very interested in seeing how, I'd been quite close to Bombay Dreams as a production, because I had known A.R. Rahman at the time. So I'd seen this all come alive. Suddenly there was Priya Kalidas doing Bombay Dreams and going to see it, and watching how the whole Bollywood thing at that point really took over in the UK. That was around 2002. So by 2003 I'd gone to this seminar. There was an editor of a magazine there who sat next to me, and she just got chatting to me because I was sitting in the front row, and she was actually a panelist. And she said, "Oh, so why are you here?" I was one of the few Asian faces in an event that was very black in that sense. It was the urban music seminar. So it was more like I said, well, I came here because Rishi Rich is here. I'm very interested in his work. And she said to me, "Gosh, you're very articulate about music. You seem very passionate. Why don't you write a column for me?" And she ran a magazine called Gargamel, a reggae magazine, completely out of what any of this would be. But she said, look, we have people like Apache Indian who are Asians into reggae. We know a certain amount of our readership is into our music. You know, I'm sure there'll be an appeal to you writing a column. So I said, okay, well, last thing I wrote was an essay at uni. So, you know, it's going to be interesting for me to try and recreate this as an article. But she loved what I wrote. I think I wrote from the heart, and I'd kind of traced the origins of this music and how it evolved in the West. And at that time, of course, it was great to cite Andrew Lloyd Webber, picking A.R. Rahman as the person, you know, to do this in many ways. The Asian underground scene had just been simmering before that, and then all of this happened after that. So from Rishi Rich to Jay Sean to Raghav, all these people being signed and making records and being, you know, being charting artists, you know, that was a really lovely thing. And in terms of my career now, I mean, the segue to broadcasting is also an unusual path, because I had done a lot of articles. I'd written, you know, in magazines, and I had created a magazine also, you know, an Asian Woman magazine. You know, that's when Bollywood kind of touched my life, because my prior work hadn't been so much on that. When I got that call from the BBC saying, you know, in confidence, it looks like your show, you know, we had a pilot done, you know, and that was done in confidence also. And the pilot was approved. So, you know, I was nervous about the pilot, very nervous. And when, you know, when they said it's been approved, it sounds good, let's make this happen, I was ecstatic. And then the fight really for me from day one was always about showcasing India as a whole. Because India is very, you know, in mainstream media too, it's very Bollywood, it's very Bhangra. And I wanted to showcase that, look, there's 4 southern Indian states, there's Sri Lanka, there's artists from all of these areas, they're doing big things. The music industry doesn't know where to place a Priyanka Chopra necessarily. You know, they don't know where to place a lot of musicians. You know, the Desi musician has been ever elusive to them, because what do we do? For me, the reason I cite Priyanka so much is because she has actually been on that American scene, and Jay Sean is the other one, who they've seen as someone who's kind of Latino looking, but could be one of us. So we will listen to their music, we will buy their music. And this is where it becomes very, very difficult. It's been a really interesting journey, not one I ever anticipated, not one I really prepared for, but I think the dream was always alive somewhere, and I think it kind of came into fruition. This is something that I hope that a lot of girls will pursue and follow and say, look, it can be anything. You know, your dream can be to be a doctor or an engineer, but follow it. If you think you want to be an astronaut, and people will say to you, oh God, one in a million girls can become an astronaut. Don't say no to it. Try it, do it, because you know it's not too late. For me, I made a career jump. You know, in broadcasting terms or in industry terms is considered a late career. But I've now been doing that for over 10 years, and well, actually it's now over 14 years. I'm going to be hitting a 15-year mark of starting my media career, you know. And for me, when I was 21, yes, would I have had more energy doing it? Yes, but it keeps me alive, it keeps me going now. So pursuing a career in media, the one thing I have to say to anybody, whether you're a girl or a boy, is that it's a really hard career to be in. You do work very long hours. It can be quite antisocial, because if you're working in shifts, you know, you might have to do something from 8 to 10 or 10 to midnight. My parents, it's taken them a while to come around to what I do now. They love what I do. They support it hugely. And, you know, they're both very creative people with great knowledge of these subjects. My dad taught me a lot of the music I know, you know, and it's kind of interesting that now they really appreciate, like I have this Sunday Raga segment covering the classical aspects of the music on my show, for example, and they love it, and it's great to be able to explore that. I think that the glass ceiling does exist. I think it's very difficult for women in any, I mean, I'm talking of women in any color. You don't have to be Asian. A woman from any background has to fight that much harder to be recognized and to be allowed into the boys' club in some ways. Someone like myself, I've been through domestic violence. I've escaped, a horrible marriage, and I've then found love, and I've struggled, in terms of my health, and in terms of even career. It's been a struggle. A lot of this has been a struggle. I work 18-hour days, even to date, but this is work that I'm passionate about. I have to say that, don't let anything stop you, because the world is full of detractors. I'm not going to lie. I've had everybody from close friends to colleagues to family say, oh my gosh, you've made a mess of your life. And, yet here I am standing and saying that, well, I don't think I've made a mess of my life. I do like to think that I'm making a difference to other people. And that for me is more important than what you feel. And I've just been one of those people I've followed my passions. I think once I found my passions, I followed them. But, even in my most dark times where I've been depressed and suicidal, music has kept me going, and that's been like a very important thing for me. I think I've had so many of those dark times, and I've been very blessed that a lot of musicians have taken me under their wing in some ways and kind of guided me with life and given me that kind of hope. And sometimes that's all you need, is someone to believe in what you're doing and what you're working on and working with.